everybody, and welcome to this week's AEW Dynamite review show here on the unofficial WWE podcast. Today is Thursday, August 26, 2021. My name is Mimi Burris, and as always, we are reviewing last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. However, we're doing something a little bit different this week, guys. We're doing something a little bit special. We're going to do AEW Dynamite for Dummies, brought to you by a dummy. This idea was suggested by our wonderful, this idea was suggested by a wonderful listener, Amanda, so thank you, Amanda, and I think this is a great idea. The whole premise of this, guys, is that, with Punk coming to AEW on Friday, last week on Friday, for Rampage, a lot of new listeners, new viewers of WWE are now watching AEW. I don't know if I'm making sense. A lot of new people are tuning into Dynamite and tuning into AEW, and it's a lot to take in at first. When I first started watching it, I've not been watching Dynamite since its inception. I've since gone back and watched a lot of this stuff. However, when I first started watching, I was totally lost too, and I originally only started watching the show for the other show I do here, the Highs and Lows of the Week, and I wanted to make sure I had a full encompassing view of all of wrestling, all of mainstream, or the top mainstream professional wrestling here in North America, so I could give you guys the best perspective of your quote-unquote high and low of the week. Not your quote-unquote, your high and low of the week in wrestling. However, turns out the show is really good and really entertaining and rewarding and emotionally, it rewards my emotional investment. You know what, I'm not going to go down. I'm going to go down a road right there of all the reasons I love Dynamite, and that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about Dynamite, to understand a lot of what's going on Dynamite and on Rampage, obviously, as well now. This week we're going to do a review of Dynamite, and we're also going to, as we review each part of Dynamite, we're going to kind of go into who's who, why are they feuding, what's their history, and we'll kind of see how this goes. If we like this, if I get good feedback on this, maybe we'll do it again next week or another time. Maybe we'll do it for a Rampage. I don't know. But again, I want to make sure a lot of you guys, you're listening to the WWE podcast, so you obviously probably watch WWE unless you're exclusively here for my Dynamite review show, which I doubt that's happening. So yeah, if you are a new viewer to Dynamite, this is your show. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of who's Orange Cassidy? Why does he keep putting his hands in his pockets? All that stuff, and I got a couple questions off Twitter as well, as to make sure I get into this, and that. So we'll cover as much as I possibly can and as much as I can remember as we go through this week's episode. And what a good week to do that, because this week's episode sucked. So for the most part, at least. So it'll give us a lot more to talk about rather than me just being like, hated this. So with all that being said, if you are an avid Dynamite watcher, then maybe this show isn't for you, or even better, maybe you could learn something new that you didn't know, or maybe you just want something going on in the background of whatever you're doing right now. So nevertheless, guys, we're going to get into, like I said, this week's Dynamite, and we are going to get into a lot of history of Dynamite, I guess, and history of the characters and why they are where they are, why they're feuding with who they're feuding with, and all the like. Nonetheless, guys, I will stop talking. This has been a long intro. We're going to play the music, and we're going to get into all of it right after this.
Next on the tape line, Mr. Rudy Lee. Jungle Boy. Tag Team Champions just invaded Daily's place. We are the pinnacle. The electros apply. No other championship means that much. I can't believe what we're seeing here.
As always, guys, I hope you had a great week, and I hope you enjoyed this week's Dynamite, because like I said at the top of the show, I didn't, for the most part, at least. And we're going to get into exactly why and everything else. And like I said, we're going to do an AEW Dynamite for Dummies here. Before we get into this show and the start of the show here, I do want to quickly mention, first of all, we're on Patreon. It's $1 a month. Patreon.com/WWE Podcast or the WWE Pod. We're on Patreon. Just go check us out. Look up WWE Podcast. You'll find it. You're capable. I believe in you. And if you are not a Patreon person, if Patreon just isn't for you, we're also on iTunes. You can subscribe to the WWE Podcast for a nice fee of, I think it's $2.99 a month. or something like that, and you get all these shows ad-free. Nonetheless, I never have the information, so if you're new here, this is pretty normal for me. Yep, never have the correct information as to what things cost or what you have to pay, but I do know that we're available ad-free for a low cost. So if you hate ads like I do, you can get rid of them very, very simply for a very reasonable price. So that's that out of the way. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, guys, I know nothing. I really, genuinely, there's so much pro wrestling out there, and along with Indies, New Japan, Impact, there's so much in the world of professional wrestling and history, and I know nothing, genuinely, in comparison to obviously everything that's out there. So I am not coming to you guys on this podcast as on any high horse, on any pedestal, I am like no wrestling encyclopedia whatsoever. I know a lot about WWE and WWE's history from, more so the time I've been alive, but also beyond that as well. But, there's a lot of stuff, like I said, I just don't know. So you listening to this right now might know more than I do. And if you do, power to you. Tweet me at the tweeter, at Mimi Burris. Let me know. I ask questions to you guys all the time, and usually you get back to me, whether it's an email form or whether it's on Twitter, answering the questions that I have on this show. Because again, I really, I am just more so dipping my toe into all things pro wrestling outside of WWE in the recent present, and I don't know what I'm trying to say. Recently, I've been doing that. So, just wanted to mention that. Like I said, probably going to be a lot of I don't knows throughout this, but I'm going to do my best to give you as much knowledge as I have in regards to all the stuff we're going to talk about here on the show today. So, without further ado, no more introductions. Let's just get into the show. Dynamite opened up, obviously, with the great intro, and by the way, they edit that almost every single week and add the new stuff that's happened, because almost every single week, something new happens. CM Punk debuts, The Pinnacle, we have Chris Jericho fighting Juventud Guerrero. I don't know, there's just new stuff happening all the time. The women are main eventing with an unsanctioned match. All this great stuff that goes on, and so they edit that intro weekly, it feels like, with whatever is the new hot thing, and make sure they put it on in there. So with Sting debuting, all the like. So that's not important. But our opening match was Matt Hardy versus Orange Cassidy, and guys, this was stupid. This was a really stupid decision. Why was this a stupid decision? Well, AEW, for, again, those of you who don't know, or this is your first time watching Dynamite, the opening match is a really important, and I don't want to use the word historical, but let me use the word, I guess, prestigious part of Dynamite. It's got a very, prestigious history in Dynamite for the minimal amount of history that Dynamite actually does have. Why? Because they're in the first match, most of the time, they don't have to do an ad break, which means we don't get that annoying picture-in-picture thing, and you get to watch the entire match. So therefore, normally, it's your best match of the night is the opening match, and or maybe your second best match of the night because of the main event. So we usually get great six-man tags with the Young Bucks. Hangman Page had a great opening slot there on almost, it felt like, 7-10 weeks of Dynamite in a row. He was on every opening match. We get a great match with Ray Phoenix. You put your best match first on Dynamite, essentially. Orange Cassidy versus Matt Hardy should not be opening your episode of AEW Dynamite. There is nothing all elite, and I've said it before on this show, there's nothing all elite about Matt Hardy in 2021. I'm sorry, guys. As a manager, fine. And he popped me a couple times in this match. There were some good spots, and it's cute, the delete and the kicks and whatever, that spot is cute, but it's not opening match of Dynamite worthy. They have 2 hours on the show to fill, and they usually don't do a great job of deciding what is allotted more time and what is allotted less. And Matt Hardy specifically has been allotted way too much time on Dynamite. And there is nothing hot about the feud between Orange Cassidy and Matt Hardy. Orange Cassidy, as a wrestler right now, is super hot and super over, as you guys could probably tell by the noise the crowd was making in Milwaukee. Orange Cassidy's got a gimmick that should not work on national television, but it does. And it is really different, that's for sure. It's definitely shocking to somebody who's never seen Orange Cassidy wrestle before. He's got a very distinct gimmick. Love the jean look, obviously. But so yeah, Orange Cassidy's story, essentially, for those of you who are not familiar with him, got really popular on the indie scene with this gimmick of just like the most lazy wrestler, the little thumbs up he does, the little kicks he does, all of that got him really over. And as you could tell, right, the crowd loves him. And so you could put him against Matt Hardy, and the crowd's going to be into it. Matt Hardy came into AEW. Obviously, for you guys who watch WWE, you got to know who Matt Hardy is. Matt Hardy came into AEW. If you guys remember, in WWE, he had did the Woken gimmick that was a spinoff of his Broken gimmick in Impact Wrestling, but came into AEW, did a supernatural thing for a little while. Tony Khan, the creator of AEW, Tony Khan, the head booker of AEW, was not happy with the decision that he allowed Matt Hardy to do that gimmick in AEW. AEW is not a place where there is supernatural stuff that goes on. We have a couple things that might veer on supernatural-ish, but it's very clear that it's just a mystique or whatever. Your your Malachi Blacks, your Chris Statlanders, Abaddon, all things that kind of veer on this weird supernatural thing, but it's very clear that they are not supernatural. Tony Khan is not about supernatural stuff in this professional wrestling company. AEW is very strict about being a sports simulated company, meaning they announce all their matches beforehand. There are no impromptu matches normally. I don't think ever, really. They had that one a week or two ago on Dynamite, but it wasn't an impromptu match. They just switched the match card around for the night. So that's why Matt Hardy is not doing the Broken gimmick anymore, or Woken, whatever you want to refer to it as. He had a great feud with Sammy Guevara for a little while, and the great word is I'm a little lenient there. It was intense. There was a lot of botching and bleeding, and it was really hardcore, let me put it that way. And then Matt Hardy more recently has turned into this gimmick, Big Money Matt. He's got the Hardy Family Foundation, which is formed of Private Party, which is a young tag team, still green in the ring, but they're really talented, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Quinn. And he's got a couple other tag teams that are in that as well, Butcher and the Blade, whoever else. Some of the names are escaping me right now. So that's Matt Hardy's faction. AEW is formed in factions, really. Almost everybody's part of a group. Very few people are solely on their own. And that makes for great wrestling television, because instead of giving a match away or having a match to build a match, you can have these other people in these factions facing each other, and therefore then you don't give away the match between head of this faction and head of this faction. We're going to talk more about that later, I assume, because it's intertwined in all of AEW's storylines. So, with all that being said, I'm real roundabout. We're going to go off track probably a bunch here. But yes, Matt Hardy now is doing this Big Money Matt character where essentially he's taking most of the profits from all of his quote-unquote clients, and these are these other tag teams. Realistically, it makes no sense, because these tag teams should be feuding with each other because you want to be number one in the ranking system. The ranking system, here we go again, off a totally different thing. Regarding being sports simulated, AEW has a ranking system. So, the more matches you win, the higher you are up in the ranking system, like any other sport, like any other combat sport, like any other sport, period, really. The more matches you win, the more games you win, the more whatever, you're higher up in the rankings. Super simple concept, right? So that is one of the best things about AEW, the ranking system, and one of the worst. So they have a men's singles they have a men's singles division, obviously. They have a women's singles division, and then they have the men's tag team division. And so all three of those divisions have their own separate ranking systems. Currently, as I pull it up now on my computer, in the men's ranking divisions, Christian Cage is number 1 with 7-0. Darby Allin's number 2 with 16-2. Orange Cassidy is number 3 with 13-1, and then 1. I guess it's a draw. Then we have Powerhouse Hobbs, Will Hobbs, 14-2, and Jungle Boy, who is 13-2. So obviously, like I said, the more matches you win, the higher up you are in the ranking system. That's why, for one of the reasons, they have AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation, which are two shows that are, I think, only solely on YouTube you can watch them. You can watch them live, and then they just get uploaded to YouTube anyways. So that's where, one, especially with the pandemic, right, a lot of these guys are getting reps who would normally get reps on things like house shows. A lot of these wrestlers who are on the greener side of things are getting reps and learning how to just be better in the ring and all that other stuff. All of this stuff is really well calculated, however, because again, if you're number one ranked, that means you're the number one contender for the world title or the TNT title. Or if you're in the top 5, normally you're up for being, to have a championship match. Normally, at least. There's obviously exceptions and whatever else, but that's why obviously you have your Christian Cage, who's number one ranked in AEW in men's singles division right now. And he's facing Kenny Omega at All Out in Chicago in September for the AEW World Championship. In the women's division right now, we have Chris Statlander, who is number 1 in the rankings with 14-0. Thunder Rosa is number 2 with 25-2. Ty Conti, I do that every time, guys. By the way, Ty Conti, great wrestler, but I'm gonna do that every single time I say her name because my fiance's name is Taylor. So when I see Tay, I think Tay, not Ty. Anyway, she's 23-3 at number 3. Hikaru Shida is number 4 at 12-1, and Nyla Rose is number 5 at 19-4. Obviously, Britt Baker is your women's champion with 13-1. And then in your tag team division, we have the Varsity Blondes, number 1, 18-4. Jurassic Express, 10-2, number 2. Lucha Bros are number 3, 8-0. FTR are number 4, 6-0. And Private Party are number 5, 9-2. So on AEW, after every Dynamite or Rampage, they update the rankings. You could just go to allelitewrestling.com, and it's up at the top there. It says rankings, and click the latest rankings, or you can get any of the rankings from last year, before, whenever you want. And obviously they have all the champions and their stats as well. So really well done with this whole sports simulation thing. It really adds a realistic value to it. Again, championships matter. Championship matches matter. You don't just get a number 1 contenders match by attacking the champion. You have to earn it by winning matches. So Christian Cage obviously is on a streak of 7-0. All of the rankings reset every year. So we're talking about the 2021 rankings. Overall, for example, Kenny Omega in 2021 is 6-1, but overall is 49-13 in AEW. Miro, who's your TNT champion, is 11-0 in 2021, but overall is 18-8. 18-1. I don't know why I said 8. I just was clearly reading a 1 and it came out as 8. Anyways, so that is the rankings. So I don't know how I even got on that subject. However, Matt Hardy, Orange Cassidy. Like I said, this was not a good match to have open the show. Maybe if it was in like the third hour, I'd be slightly more entertained. But some of this stuff was funny when Matt Hardy reached in his pockets, pulled out the money. I love the way this match ended with Orange Cassidy getting the roll up, putting his hands in his pocket, and getting the victory roll pin for the 1, 2, 3. I thought it was clever and it was cute. But so I explained Orange Cassidy. Obviously, his whole gimmick is the whole lazy wrestler thing, and Matt Hardy's gimmick. Why are they feuding? Guys, your guess is probably as good as mine. This feels like it's been going on forever, but I don't even think it has, and it's pointless. So I can't even explain it to you guys. The Blade attacked Orange Cassidy a while ago. They had a match. The Blade is a part of the Hardy Foundation, so now they're having a match. It's nothing very intricate or special. This wasn't good. After this match, guys, we had Malachi Black cutting a promo about how his match against Brock Anderson is going to go. And for those of you who did watch NXT, you obviously know who Aleister Black is. Malachi Black, fairly similar to Aleister Black and what his character was in NXT. We don't know a lot about Malachi Black yet, obviously, considering his recent debut. However, what we do know is he came in, he had a match with Cody Rhodes, he came in, attacked Cody Rhodes, hit Cody Rhodes with the Black Mass, and then hit Arn Anderson with the Black Mass. Arn Anderson has obviously been Cody Rhodes' coach for about, I don't know how long now, since the start of AEW from what I remember. But again, I did not watch from the beginning, so I can't tell you that for sure. But it's been a long time since Arn Anderson has been coming out to the ring with Cody Rhodes, obviously a member of the faction, the Nightmare Family, or the Nightmare Factory family. Yes, the Nightmare Family now, I think. Anyways, yeah, it's Cody Rhodes, Dustin Rhodes, and a bunch of guys who are training in their school, in their wrestling school, including someone we're going to see and talk about later on in the main event, Lee Johnson. That's all the whole nother route we're not going to go down right now. Anyways, Malachi Black, yes, came in, hit the Black Mass on Cody Rhodes, hit the Black Mass on Arn Anderson. It was awesome. Super cool debut. If you haven't seen that, go look it up on YouTube. It's on there. It's really, the crowd is incredible. Such a great pop, such a great moment. Go check it out because it was really good, because it was really unexpected, because WWE forgot to change Aleister Black, Tommy End's contract in WWE. When you're in NXT, you only have a 30-day non-compete clause. When you're in WWE, you have on the main roster, quote-unquote, SmackDown and Raw, you get a 90-day non-compete clause. So when Aleister Black came up from NXT to the main roster, they never changed that. So therefore, Malachi Black was able to debut in AEW in 30 days rather than 90 days. So it was a really good pop nonetheless. It was a really cool moment. So go check it out. That is why, however, though, Malachi Black was having a match with Brock Anderson in the main event, because he black masked his dad and then black masked Cody Rhodes, and then had a match with Cody Rhodes on the main event of Dynamite a couple weeks ago when they were back in Daly's place, which is where they had all of their shows during the pandemic for the most part. And so, yeah, he essentially kind of retired Cody Rhodes, but kind of not. It was a really good squash match. Again, another quick match to go check out if you want to feel more informed about what's going on. After that, when we came back from commercial, we had Chris Jericho coming out to Judas, which is Chris Jericho's band Fozzie's song. It's a big thing. If you're in the crowd in AEW, you know all the words, you sing the song. You will probably, if you watch Dynamite for 3 weeks at this point, you'll catch on because it's a really catchy song. But yes, Chris Jericho is in his last legs probably as a wrestler, and we'll talk about that too with this promo. So he soaks it all in. He soaks all of the Judas and the crowd and everything in, and power to him. The man's been wrestling for 30 years. He deserves to be doing that. So he comes out, he tells the crowd that they sound great, talks about what a great week it's been for AEW and just in wrestling in general. He says everybody's been celebrating except for him because he lost to MJF for the third time, and even worse, he tapped out to MJF with the Salt of the Earth. This obviously happened last week on Dynamite in the main event. It's been driving him crazy, and people are asking him why he keeps putting himself in that situation in the first place, and it's because that's who he is. He's Chris Jericho. It's what he does. But the fact that he failed to beat MJF has been driving him literally crazy. He's got a voice in his head that won't shut up. It keeps saying, beat MJF, beat MJF, beat MJF, and he can't. He hasn't. And the thing is, until this ends, he knows, MJF knows Chris Jericho's going to keep attacking him in the ring, backstage, wherever. And that's why he's got a proposal for MJF. He asks if MJF will come out. MJF doesn't. So Jericho just says he hopes he's listening backstage and says, one more match, one more final fight at All Out in Chicago. And if he can't beat MJF, then maybe he does not belong in All Elite Wrestling anymore. So if MJF beats him, he'll go down and do commentary full-time on Rampage, maybe even commentary on Dynamite one day. And if MJF wins, he'll never wrestle in AEW again. Later on, they said he'll never wrestle, period, again. So I don't know there's not much of a distinction there, but whatever. It's important, I guess. So yeah, he says basically he's putting his career on the line against MJF for one more match. Now this, guys, MJF versus Chris Jericho, this is a whole nother conversation, like a whole nother can of worms, essentially. So, MJF is one of the greatest heels ever, and he's only 25 years old, I think, if I got that age right. I should get that age right, because that's kind of my gimmick here. I know everybody's ages for some reason. However, MJF is probably one of the greatest heels in wrestling ever, and he's only been doing this for the short amount of time that he's been doing this. So, pretty incredible, right? He cuts promos and says things that he shouldn't be allowed to say, but he says them anyways. For those of you who haven't seen it, I would go recommend you watch the presidential address. You can look that up on YouTube too. Just look up MJF presidential address. He was feuding against Jon Moxley, one of the greatest promos of the modern era. Really good stuff. So MJF was kind of a protege-esque to Chris Jericho. Well, first of all, MJF was, we'll go way back here and we'll fast forward. MJF was a protege to Cody Rhodes at the beginning in AEW, turned on Cody Rhodes. They had these, Cody Rhodes wanted to get his hands on MJF, obviously, after he turned on him. They had these great matches. Basically, Cody Rhodes had to go through labors, similar to what Chris Jericho was doing to get a match with MJF in the first place. Cody Rhodes ended up making it through those labors and then got the match against MJF, with MJF subsequently won the match, if I remember correctly. And now they basically did a callback to that where Chris Jericho wanted to get his hands on MJF, so MJF did these 5 labors of Jericho. He had the match against Shawn Spears, where Shawn Spears could use a chair, but Chris Jericho couldn't. He had the match against Nick Gage. We can't even go down the Nick Gage territory if you guys don't know who Nick Gage is. If you want to know who Nick Gage is, there's a great Dark Side of the Ring on Nick Gage. I go recommend you watch that. He faced Juventud Guerrero. He had to do a move off the top rope, and that was something else. He faced Wardlow in the fourth labor, and then obviously the fifth labor was versus MJF. The Wardlow, for those of you, again, who don't know, is essentially MJF's heavy. Yes, so the fifth labor of Jericho was last week, and MJF beat Chris Jericho by using his finishing maneuver, submission, salt of the earth. It's essentially an arm bar. And Chris Jericho tapped out, who Chris Jericho's had an injured arm for a while, so that's kind of the out there. How he injured his arm, he got pushed off the top of a cage in Blood and Guts, which was a match that the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle had. Okay, who's the Pinnacle? The Pinnacle is a group that was formed by MJF while MJF was in the Inner Circle, kind of. He was essentially playing protege to Chris Jericho. They had their first match against each other, and if MJF won, he was going to be a part of the Inner Circle, if I remember correctly, and if he lost, he wasn't. MJF won, became a part of the Inner Circle. The Inner Circle consists of Sammy Guevara, Proud and Powerful, which is Santana and Ortiz, Jake Hager, which is Jack Swagger from WWE, and Chris Jericho, and MJF for that brief period as well. They had the Dinner Day Debonair, which is a whole thing too that we can't get into. They did a lot of great stuff during the pandemic, essentially. And then MJF, like I said, was a part of the Inner Circle. We could all see the turn coming. It was happening. MJF, the Inner Circle basically kicked MJF out of the Inner Circle before MJF could turn, but MJF was a step ahead of them. Already had his own faction formed with FTR, which was, what was their name? The Revival in WWE. Great tag team. Shawn Spears, who was Ty Dillinger in WWE or in NXT. Perfect 10 Ty Dillinger. And Tully Blanchard, obviously, who is one of the Four Horsemen from WCW and from the NWA. So yes, a lot of people, a lot of things going on, a lot of moving parts. This feud should have been a lot better than it was, probably, but it still was really good. The first match that the factions had against each other was Blood and Guts. It took place on Dynamite. It is essentially War Games, if you've ever seen an NXT, but better. Way better. This match should have been better than it was, but still worth a watch. If you guys want to watch it, just look up Blood and Guts, AEW. I'm sure the full match will be on there somewhere. The Pinnacle ended up winning MJF's faction, and they won, and then MJF pushed Chris Jericho off the top of the cage. Really bad, poorly produced bump. You could clearly see the mats and the crash pads and all that stuff. That's how Chris Jericho hurt his arm. They had another match, a Stadium Stampede match. It's a cinematic thing. I can't even go down that road. We'll cover that another time, where the Inner Circle won. So right now, MJF is beat Chris Jericho, is now 2-0 over Chris Jericho. And then in this third match he had with Chris Jericho was last week on Dynamite, fifth labor, he won. So MJF 3-0 over Chris Jericho. MJF kind of like essentially wants Chris Jericho's spot. He doesn't want to be the next Jericho, but he wants Chris Jericho's spot as this demo god, as the big draw in AEW, yada, yada, yada. Therefore, that's why they're feuding now, and that's why they're going to have another match at All Out for Chris Jericho's career, probably. Obviously, it's still pending, but it's probably going to happen. Now, should they be having this match? That's another question. I don't think that Chris Jericho is obviously... I wouldn't say that Chris Jericho is necessarily all elite as a wrestler anymore. As a performer, absolutely. Chris Jericho is so over with the fans. You can clearly tell by the way they're singing his song, by the way they react when he's on the mic. He's one of the best on the mic still. The match is limited, however, though, because Chris Jericho is limited because the man is in his 50s. And obviously he was definitely worn down from wrestling. The man should not be a weekly wrestler on Dynamite anymore. I think this match will be better than the last. Obviously, he will be able to use his finisher, the Judas Effect. And he will be better rested, I assume. I think that the last match and the end of the feud was a little bit underwhelming for this feud, who's been going on for about 11 to 12 months now. So I see why they're doing this. Early prediction, I've heard a lot of people say Chris Jericho's going to win this. I think he's going to lose. I think Chris Jericho might be done, guys. So that's what's going on here. for those of you who don't know, and that's my opinion, I guess, as to if they should do it again. I get it. I see both sides, but I get it, and I'm looking forward to it. Is it going to be the match of the night on the card? Absolutely not. MJF can go, for sure, but MJF goes better with a guy like a Sammy Guevara or a Rey Fenix or a Jungle Boy, or, again, I don't think he's ever had a match with Rey Fenix, but that's one I'd want to watch. So, nonetheless, yeah, MJF basically says that, he tapped out Chris Jericho. Being able to say that is cool, but he wants to be able to say that he ended Chris Jericho. So if Chris Jericho wants the match, he's got it, but he wants him to think it over for a little while. Next, we get a promo backstage from the Varsity Blondes. Brian Pillman Jr., obviously Brian Pillman's son. There's a great Dark Side of the Ring where you kind of get to know a little bit more about Brian Pillman Jr., obviously, and just a great human being that he is, and the adversities that he's faced, obviously with his dad being Brian Pillman, who was, again, a household name for those of you who don't know. But again, great Dark Side of the Ring if you want to go watch that. It definitely will fill you in a lot more. And Griff Garrison, who is no slouch himself either. But the two of them are very green, and we're going to talk about that, obviously, when we review the match here. They cut a promo on the Lucha Brothers telling them that their bond might not be blood, but their bond's a lot thicker because their bond is related to the fact that they want to win the tag team titles. The Young Bucks, the Good Brothers, and Brandon Cutler all set up chairs outside on the stage to watch the next match. The Young Bucks are obviously your AEW Tag Team Champions. Tag team wrestling is really important in AEW. I know that's new to any WWE fan, but the tag team titles are prestigious. The tag team division is prestigious and taken very seriously in AEW, and tag team wrestling is probably one of the biggest draws of AEW as well. The Young Bucks are revered by many as one of the greatest tag teams in the world. They have a book if you want to really get to know the Young Bucks, two Christian boys from something Cucamonga, whatever, California, I don't know. Matt and Nick Jackson. Matt is the one with the darker hair. Nick is the one who's trying to go blonde right now. And their whole gimmick right now is that they have a lot of money and they're part of the elite. Oh, hopefully we have time to get into the elite on this podcast, but we are already running super, super long with this, so we'll see. But yes, they are EVPs of AEW, executive vice presidents. But yes, they're also your tag team champions, and their whole gimmicks is that they're really obnoxious. Let's leave it at that for now. The Good Brothers, for those of you who don't know, is Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows. Formerly were in WWE as well. Doc Gallows was like Festus. Doc Gallows was in the Straight Edge Society. Doc Gallows is in all kinds of stuff in WWE. But they were part of the OC in WWE. They were AJ Styles heavies, if you guys remember that. The only club that matters. They're obviously in Impact Wrestling now. They're not signed to AEW, but they're part of the elite, so they come out as just, not, I don't want to say heavies, but essentially goons. Brandon Cutler is exactly what commentary called him. He is a goon for the elite with the cold spray. That's his gimmick, I guess, is he sprays the cold spray on them. So the match, the Lucha Brothers, Penta, El Zero Miedo and Rey Fenix versus the Varsity Blondes, Brian Pillman Jr. and Griff Garrison. This is a part of a number one contenders tournament. It's the semifinals. Obviously, the winners are going to face Jurassic Express at Rampage. We find out the Lucha Brothers win by pinfall with an assisted pile driver on Brian Pillman Jr. The Lucha Brothers are, in my opinion, the greatest tag team in the world right now. The most talented tag team in the world right now, wrestling-wise at least. Rey Fenix will do things that'll make your jaw drop and be so heavy you can't get it closed again. Rey Fenix is unbelievable. And Penta is no slouch himself either. They are they've been AAA tag team champions. They have been champions around the world from what I know. And like I said, guys, Rey Fenix, if you want to watch a match for AEW that'll just blow your mind, Rey Fenix versus Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship. Probably one of my favorite matches of all time. One of the matches I will always go back and watch when I just want to watch good wrestling. Like I said, guys, Rey Fenix will do things that'll blow your freaking mind. And like I think I mentioned before, the Varsity Blondes play off of, obviously, the Hollywood Blondes, Stone Cold Steve Austin and Brian Pillman Jr., just Brian Pillman from back in the day. They're still really green. They still need a lot of work, and so this match should have been a lot better than it was. And this was probably a good match, but a good match for the Lucha Brothers is a bad match for any other team. The Lucha Brothers, like I said, have a really high standard, similar to the Young Bucks, of their just match quality, because they're unbelievable wrestlers, unbelievable professional wrestlers. So this wasn't a good match, and for them at least, and from their standards, grading on the grading on the AEW curve. However, the Lucha Brothers do advance, and they will be facing Jurassic Express at Rampage on Friday. The winner of that match will be facing the Young Bucks in a steel cage at All Out in Chicago. Cross your fingers with me, guys. As much as I love Jurassic Express, I am hoping it is going to be the Lucha Brothers because I want them to hold the gold. I want them to be the guys who beat the Young Bucks and get the titles off these obnoxious jerks. Post-match, Jurassic Express get in the ring. Obviously, that is Luchasaurus. Yes, the man is dressed like a dinosaur, and yes, it is the coolest thing going on right now. And Jungle Boy, who is, I think, only a little bit older than I am, and one of the hottest baby faces. Rookie, I think he won Rookie of the Year in the PW Insider thing or whatever they do. He is your hot rising talent, one of the many hot rising talents in AEW, young talents. Definitely someone to keep an eye out for is Jungle Boy Jack Perry. He's just unbelievable in the ring, so much potential, and just such a likable dude. So Jurassic Express, another great tag team, like I said, obviously in the top 5 in the rankings, but just in general, so much potential there still. And when I say potential, I don't mean like they're great now, but still so much for them to be able to do in the world of professional wrestling beyond what they're doing right now. So yeah, we'll have the Lucha Brothers versus Jurassic Express on Rampage. That'll be an incredible match, no doubt about it. And if you tuned in this week and you were like, why is this Mimi girl talking about Rey Fenix like he's Jesus Christ incarnated in the professional wrestling sense, and that match wasn't all that great, why not just watch Rampage this week? Just watch Rampage, or just go watch that match against Kenny Omega. Next up, for the first time ever since the unsanctioned match between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker herself, we had the women's match not in the third hour of AEW. It was Jamie Hayter versus Red Velvet. For those of you who don't know, again, Red Velvet I thought was going to have a great Jungle Boy story. They've really been screwing the pooch right now. Red Velvet is a really just hot green, again, as you could tell by that moonsault botch she had later on in that match, is a very green professional wrestler right now. She's got a lot of work to do, needs to get a lot more reps in, but she's got potential like nobody else. She's just such a likable character. She had an unbelievable mixed tag team match with Cody Rhodes versus Shaq and Jade Cargill. If you haven't seen that match, that's another match to go check out. Yeah, Shaq wrestled and he looked great. He dominated a lot of the match too. So really something exciting to go check out if you are looking for more fun AEW things to watch that aren't just these intense 5-star matches. That was a fun thing to go check out. Jamie Hayter just returned. No, she's not Becky Lynch. Yes, she just returned. She is now going to be a heater for Britt Baker. Why Britt Baker needs a heater right now, I don't know. Why Britt Baker is a heel right now, I don't know. Again, if this is your first time listening to the show, AEW's women's division is crap right now. It has a lot of problems. And the number one problem is the fact that Britt Baker is their champion. She is so over, it's ridiculous, and the company continues to push her as a heel. Gives her heaters, gives her, obviously, Rebel, makes her do what she did in this match, particularly during the match, after the match, the beatdown, all of that stuff. The problem is when you have a babyface that you're booking as a heel, when you book them against babyfaces, it turns every babyface you're booking them against heel. If you followed that, I give you credit because that was confusing coming out of my own brain. So we have Chris Statlander right now, who is the number one contender for the AEW Women's Championship and will be facing Britt Baker at All Out. However, she's not a, valid contender. She's valid because she's number one in the rankings, but no one really sees Chris Statlander as a threat, I don't think, to Britt Baker's title reign because there's no story behind the whole thing. They have booked zero story. They had booked zero story for the Red Velvet match they had on Rampage against the main event of the first Rampage ever against Britt Baker. It wasn't, Britt Baker played situational babyface, I guess, kind of, not really even, just Red Velvet played like situational heel in Pittsburgh, which was Britt Baker's hometown, or is Britt Baker's hometown. The women's division is a mess. Anyways, Jamie Hayter wins by pinfall with that insane clothesline. Let me put it this way, Red Velvet did not look great in this match. She got lost a bunch, you could tell, but Jamie Hayter looked like a beast, and Jamie Hayter's got a lot. She's going to do incredible things if AEW gets their stuff together and books this women's division correctly, because Jamie Hayter looked like a star in this match. Stiff, incredible stuff. Really, that lariat looked intense. The way she threw into the ring post made it look like she literally just decapitated Red Velvet. Post-match, like I said, Chris Statlander runs to the ring to clear out the ring because Hayter and Rebel and Britt Baker are, attacking Red Velvet after the match. Goes at it a little bit with Britt Baker, but somehow, someway, I'll say this, Chris Statlander did get cheers, not boos, and Britt Baker is still playing a heel. It makes no sense. All right, backstage. I'm fast forwarding a little bit here, guys, because we got a lot to cover, and I get to do another wonderful podcast tonight with Michael Gross. Information on that to be announced, obviously. Gonna be some good stuff coming out, though. I'll plug that really quickly. I think we got a fun idea going, and yeah, I'm running behind already as I am. So, Dark Order backstage, and Evil Uno is talking about how they say they're a unit, they're a family. There's not any dissension, but there clearly is dissension. Makes a jab, there's dissension, yada yada yada. The Dark Order, guys. The Dark Order originally was really awful. Brody Lee came in, the late John Huber, who obviously passed away last year. I think it was last year. Rest his soul, obviously, and the man was incredibly talented. Took the Dark Order from obscurity and crap and made them a much, much better. Squashed Cody Rhodes in a TNT Championship match. He was diamond in the rough, right? We would have never thought that Luke Harper in WWE, who was Brody Lee now, obviously, in AEW, was as talented as he was, because we never got to see it, and we really only got this short little showcase of it, obviously wishing we got more, and it was taken from us so young. But the Dark Order was a faction led by Brody Lee eventually, obviously in AEW. Brody Lee passed, the Dark Order essentially turned babyface, because how do you not turn babyface after a tragedy like that? If you hear anything about Negative One is Brody Lee's son, and AEW is just a great company who does good things, and so I'm not going to go down that wonderful. But they had a great tribute show for him if you want to watch that at some point, if you haven't. They really handled the whole thing, and I think continue to handle the whole passing of Brody Lee, John Huber, very tastefully, very well. But that's the Dark Order story. They are in a story with Hangman Adam Page, who obviously out of wrestling storyline. His partner just had a baby. That's why he's not around right now. That's why Christian Cage is facing Kenny Omega at All Out, not Hangman Page. We don't have time to get into that whole thing right now, too. But there's some dissension, essentially, by how the Dark Order is handling the Hangman Page situation, because Hangman Page no longer wanted help from the Dark Order, as he kind of became their pseudo-leader in a way, but not really. He more just joined the Dark Order. There's an incredible storyline going on with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega that we don't have the time to get into right now, but maybe that's a whole separate podcast in itself. All right. After commercial, we come back. Tony Schiavone interviewing CM Punk. Huge pop again. We got a recap of Rampage, but Tony Schiavone asks him the one thing that brought him back to professional wrestling. He answers Tony Schiavone saying that he can't hear him. Great stuff. He answers Penta, he answers Ray Phoenix, Brian Pillman Jr., Jungle Boy, all those names. But before those names, there's one guy. He's going to go ahead and retire the nickname, the Voice of the Voiceless, because this place has a voice and there's people in the back that listen to them. You know why he's here. He watched Darby Allin. He's reckless to the point of destruction, and he sits back and looks at all the young talent and says, can CM Punk still go? Does CM Punk still have what it takes? Can CM Punk still be the best in the world? And if the answer is yes, it starts with Darby Allin, someone who would have been his favorite wrestler when he was 15. He doesn't fit the mold of what a professional wrestler usually is. He's not the biggest, he's not the strongest, but he's got heart. And if he's going to answer those questions to himself, before he can continue, the crowd starts to chant yes. Great Bryan Danielson tease here where he says, Punk points out that's somebody else's shtick, and if the crowd's a little bit more, the crowd just has to be a little bit more patient for that one. Huge pop once again. But now to answer those questions, it comes down to All Out on September 5th. He says hi to his beautiful wife sitting at home, and just soaks in the crowd a little bit more. And CM Punk being in AEW, guys, I don't need to give you any opinion on that. This is just great stuff. The only thing I'll say, and a minor critique, is I would love to see CM Punk a little bit more the wrestler, less, Phil Brooks, the excited guy, to get back in pro wrestling, if that makes any sense. it's hard to sell a fight that's a face versus a face like this. Really, the match itself sells itself. So, yeah, I mean, I would continue to have CM Punk come on television, get the ratings, soak this up. That's really all I can analyze about this. But we have Miro cutting a backstage promo where he says he forgives Fuego del Sol, promises to find Eddie Kingston, drag him out of the river, and hold him under. God will back him because he is a redeemer, and his wife will love him because he is the champion. Miro, obviously, was Rusev in WWE. Miro, in the beginning, was the best man. It was an awful gimmick, guys. It was terrible. With Kip Sabian, it didn't work for a while, but now became the redeemer. Essentially just squashes little men and other guys too, like Lance Archer, but squashes them in these great little TV matches for the TNT title, which is an extremely prestigious second title to the AEW World Heavyweight Championship. And it looks like Miro's next challenger is Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston has a Cinderella story in professional wrestling. Speaking of Eddie Kingston, our next match was Darby Allin, Eddie Kingston, and Jon Moxley versus the Wingmen, Cesar Bononi, JD Drake, and Ryan Nemeth, with Pretty Peter Avalon ringside, obviously. This was a glorified house match. This was essentially a second rendition of the match they had against Daniel Garcia in 2.0 a couple weeks ago. I don't know why exactly they ran this back. I think it was silly. I don't think it made sense here. Again, for you guys that don't know, Darby Allin, more of a homegrown talent. Eddie Kingston, Darby Allin comes out with Sting, by the way. It's a nice, mutually beneficial relationship. Sting gives him the rub. I also think he adds a lot to Sting in AEW. Darby Allin is similar to a Jeff Hardy, is the best comparison I can make for you WWE fans. Eddie Kingston, as I started to mention before, has a very Cinderella story in professional wrestling, wrestled on the indies for a really long time. Again, the guy doesn't look like your professional wrestling mold. He's not your Randy Ortons. He's not your Triple H's. He's built different, but Eddie Kingston is probably top 5 promos in professional wrestling right now. He's one of the greatest on the stick, without a doubt. And Jon Moxley, your former Dean Ambrose. Jon Moxley was the AEW World Heavyweight Champion for a real long time. He beat Chris Jericho, who was the inaugural champion, and had a long title reign during the pandemic, carried them through during the pandemic. His gimmick, essentially, he's a bad, mother. That's the best way to put it, guys. The Wingmen are glorified jobbers, and I'll leave it at that. So this match was, to me, unnecessary. They just did something like this with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. I thought this was a glorified house match, like I said, a house show match. But Darby Allin, Eddie Kingston, and Jon Moxley win by pinfall. Darby Allin hits the coffin drop on JD Drake. I thought this was booked really poorly. I didn't think this needed to be on the show. The crowd was really not even that into it like they were before, Post-match, we had Daniel Garcia, who I just mentioned, come out. Daniel Garcia is another man who's been really high on the indies, and I think just got signed. I don't know if he's signed officially, but if he isn't already, he's going to be signed to AEW. He's been really hot on the indies lately, young guy, and he will probably face Darby Allin after the CM Punk match. So Daniel Garcia, really talented technical wrestler, by the way. I'm underselling him right now, but he's a super talented guy. Comes in, gets a couple cheap shots on Darby Allin, beats him down before, Eddie Kingston, Jon Moxley, and Sting come to try to make the save, but he runs off. Yeah, I have nothing more to say on this match, guys. Like I said, I think this is a perfect show to tell you guys all about all the stuff that the history and all that stuff of AEW and these wrestlers, because honestly, I think it's been a really pointless episode of Dynamite. I thought a lot of this stuff was really needless and a really bad timing, too, when you have CM Punk in that 1.2 rating that Rampage did, by the way. Throw that out there. That's incredible. 10 o'clock on a Friday night. 1.2 million people watched the show live. Unbelievable. Unbelievable number. So, Ty Conti is being interviewed backstage. Before she can answer any questions about the Casino Battle Royale, we'll talk about that on another occasion, I assume, but the Casino Battle Royale is essentially a ripoff of the Royal Rumble, but it's way worse. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's a bad gimmick match. It makes no sense. So, I feel like I'm it's fun. It can be a fun match, but it's really bad. They need to fix the format to it. Anyways, she's being interviewed, but before she can say anything, the bunny rolls up. Yes, her name is the bunny. She's great. the Bunny is probably one of the greatest hands that the women's division has right now. She's a part of the Hardy family office. She's basically telling, right, Ty Conti, come join the Hardy family office. Your Dark Order is having all this dissension. Ty Conti's a part of the Dark Order. This is a nothing feud, short feud to have a television match on Rampage to build the Casino Battle Royale, and that's all I have to say about it. It to me, at least the women are getting a little bit more spotlight on on Dynamite. That's really all I can say about this. We get a FTR video package mainly focused on Cash Wheeler's injured arm, and that they're going to run this match back, FTR versus Proud and Powerful. I mentioned them before. FTR is a part of the Pinnacle. Proud and Powerful is a part of the Inner Circle. The Pinnacle and the Inner Circle are feuding. Therefore, because the faction versus faction thing, you get great matches like FTR versus Proud and Powerful. They had a match before. The match wasn't great. Really underwhelming. And Cash Wheeler got terribly injured, as you could tell from this video package. Cut down, sliced his arm. I think the nerve damage that they mentioned is kind of more of a work than anything, because if he really had nerve damage, they wouldn't be letting him wrestle on television. However, I hope that when they run this match back, it's a lot better the second time around than the first, because this match has a lot of potential. FTR, formerly the Revival in NXT, one of the greatest just classic tag team wrestling tag teams in the world, and Proud and Powerful, one of the most a tag team that has some of the most potential momentum, babyface momentum behind them. This should be exciting. So look forward to next week. This is most likely going to be a great match. I know I said that before, and they really did underdeliver, but I think they know that, and they are going to do a much better job this time around. And after that video package, we had the AEW World Champion, Kenny Omega. And guys, I could do an entire podcast just trying to explain the greatness of Kenny Omega. Another EVP in AEW, another founder, obviously, of AEW, and one of the greatest wrestlers in the world right now. Kenny Omega won the AEW World Heavyweight Championship from Jon Moxley, cheated to win, essentially. They had a gentleman's agreement, they were going to, whatever, it was a whole thing. But yes, turned heel in that match, obviously, and now we have Don Callis, who is the manager, I guess if you want to call it that way, of Kenny Omega. Longtime family. There's a whole history that is not, I couldn't even try to summarize between Kenny Omega and Don Callis and the rest of the elite. Kenny Omega is obviously part of the elite, the super elite. Yeah, which entails the Young Bucks, the Gun Club, not Gun Club, I'm thinking about the next match, not the Gun Club. Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, the Bullet Club, which I mentioned before, Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows, and that's a whole new Japan, I can't even get into all that, and I don't even have all the information on it, guys. That's, you will probably want to turn to a more informed wrestling fan than myself for the entire super elite history and background, but all you need to know is they're super entertaining, and Kenny Omega is playing this great, chicken stuff heel. Don Callis, one of the greatest talkers in the business right now, and just so irritating. There's a shtick, essentially every time Tony Schiavone tries to interview any of them, Don Callis just takes the microphone from him. He's got a terrible scarf on. But he takes the mic. He says that they're going to take Christian Cage out once and for all. Before they can even get going, though, Christian Cage comes out. Christian Cage is Christian in WWE. He was in Impact for a while, obviously, as well. Made his return recently at what paper? I think it was Double or Nothing? And essentially, since he's come back to AEW, his gimmick has been that he's outworking everybody. And he's been able to do that, considering he's the number 1 ranked male wrestler in the company, 7-0. He shows the video package that's been floating around this week. It was also on the Road to. The Road to is something AEW does before most Dynamites and Rampages and pay-per-views, where it's essentially like a 10-minute little promo video for the entire show. It's on YouTube on AEW's channel. You should watch them, guys. They're really good. But it's basically proof that Don Callis is a carny piece of you-know-what, trying to replace Christian Cage with a 10-year-old Kenny Omega back in the 90s. Don Callis hiring Christian... There's a whole history between Don Callis and Christian Cage, again, that if you want to do more research into, power to you. Not enough time to explain the whole thing on this podcast, and I don't even know the whole thing, guys, because I'm only 23, and Christian Cage is in his 40s and is still wrestling. Kenny Omega says that nothing's changed. Don Callis says favoring family over talent makes him just like Bill Watts, Eddie Graham, and Vince McMahon. Puts over Kenny Omega, as always. Kenny, by God, Omega. Christian Cage says he doesn't know what's weirder, that Don Callis manipulated a 10-year-old Omega or that he's still letting him do it as an adult. Callis asks his guys to hold his scarf and his jacket, saying that this is making him very upset. What Christian is going to find out at All Out is that when he stands next to Kenny, he is what he's been his entire career, second best. And then Christian obviously has had enough. A brawl breaks out, and then Brandon Cutler sprays the cold spray on Christian Cage. They start beating him down. Before they can continue the beatdown, Frankie Kazarian comes in and makes the save. Frankie Kazarian, where do we begin? Frankie Kazarian was in a tag team with a guy named Christopher Daniels, SCU. They've been a tag team for a very, very long time, obviously. They had a whole shtick where they were, the first match that they lost, they were going to break up as a tag team. They lost to the Young Bucks. That's when the Young Bucks actually had turned heel. Or around that time they had turned heel. They turned heel beforehand, but that was around the time they turned heel. They turned heel on Jon Moxley, actually. So he's become the elite hunter ever since. Frankie Kazarian, very mad at the Young Bucks, who cheated to win the match and basically broke up SCU and ended Christopher Daniels' career, essentially. So, however, though, this gimmick was great and this whole shtick was great until Doc Gallows beat Doc Gallows beat Frankie Kazarian in a nothing match on Dynamite. So yes, that's why Frankie Kazarian came out to make the save. He's very mad at all the guys in the Elite. In regards to this promo, guys, Don Callis doing what Don Callis does best. I love this. I really did. This was probably the best segment on the show. Christian Cage made it so this match between Christian Cage, who, again, this match we all thought was going to be Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega, but they had to delay that, obviously, due to Kenny Omega now recently becoming a dad. Congratulations to him and his partner, obviously. They had to speed up this Christian Cage thing, which was probably going to be a TV match, or call an audible, and have Christian Cage be Kenny Omega's all-out opponent. They made something that should have been a Dynamite main event into a pay-per-view main event in these great segments, because Christian Cage has been great, with the history, with Don Callis. They've just been doing an amazing job of promoting this, in my opinion. The match itself on paper didn't sound very interesting. I was not about it. I was talking to Ashley Mann a lot about this as well. I was really not for this, and once again, Christian Cage has sold me on this match. They sold me on the match when they had the match at Rampage, and Christian Cage beat Kenny Omega. So they've added a lot of drama to this, and I'm into it. Jon Moxley is backstage cutting a promo next on the New Japan shtick that he's been on lately. The Forbidden Door, obviously, AEW has allowed a lot of other wrestlers from other companies to come in, Impact, New Japan, and they've also been sending their wrestlers to New Japan and Impact. Obviously why Christian Cage can be the Impact champion right now. Jon Moxley wants to wrestle Hiroshi Tanahashi, who is a very, very famous New Japan wrestler. That's not giving him nearly enough credit, but that's as much as we can get into it right now. However, backstage politics going on right now. They don't want Hiroshi Tanahashi losing to Jon Moxley. That's how they were going to book it all out. So instead, Jon Moxley says that he is going to wrestle Kojima Satoshi. I'm going to mess up that name. I am not familiar enough with New Japan guys to give you a recap on all these guys. All I know about Kojima, older gentleman, really popular in New Japan in the 90s and the 80s, if I'm correct. And they're going to have a banger at All Out, I assume. Similar to Yuji Nagata. I think the match is kind of going to be along the same vein. And that was a great match. That was one of my favorite matches this year in AEW, so... And Jon Moxley cutting a promo, guys, it's always good. It's Jon Moxley cutting a promo. So, once the bell rings, he's got no respect for anybody. Every time he squeezes your throat, he's trying to make you eat through a straw. Every time he drops you on your head, he's trying to break your neck. Essentially, on September 5th, it's going to be a public execution of the legend Satoshi Kojima. So, after this, we had a match, Gun Club, Billy Gunn, Colton Gunn, and Austin Gunn versus Aaron Solo, The Factory, Nick Comoroto, and QT Marshall. Yeah, guys, this was stupid. Before I get into, obviously, who all these guys were or are, this was so needless. This match was longer than the match at All Out is going to be between The Big Show and QT Marshall. Nonetheless, guys, I really don't have time. Like this, I don't even have time for this. This was such, I don't know if I was just in a mood because of this show, but this was, for those of you who don't know, obviously, the Gun Club play off of Billy Gunn, obviously, who was in WWE, part of DX and all that stuff. The Gun Club, obviously, his sons. The Factory is I don't want to say a spin-off, but was a part of the Nightmare Family, and they turned on the Nightmare Family. There was this whole feud, a really stupid match between Anthony Ogogo and Cody Rhodes that really amounted to nothing because we haven't seen, where's Anthony Ogogo? QT Marshall has probably too much pull backstage because he's getting more TV time in this crap than he should. So the Gun Club win by pinfall with a small package on from Colton Gunn to QT Marshall because Big Show distracts him or something. Dan Lambert next is cutting a promo with the Men of the Year at his side. Another thing on this show, guys, I just felt like I didn't have time for. This was he just cut a promo on like millennials. If you don't know who Dan Lambert is, neither did I. The Men of the Year, though, Ethan Page, the man who was standing on his right, the guy in the great Hawaiian shirt, and the who Dan Lambert put over as a 2 black belts, all that stuff. Ethan Page is a really great talent, in my opinion. Came from Impact Wrestling. He had a great feud with Darby Allin, and has feuded with Darby Allin many, many of times. Scorpio Sky, another great wrestler. Probably not nearly as good on the mic as Ethan Page, but these two guys don't need Dan Lambert talking for them. I don't know if anybody else agrees with that, but I don't need Dan. I don't need this guy. The promo was fine last week. It was better than the first one. It was better than this week's too. It was just unnecessary for me this week, guys, and I don't think this is a good fit. But Tony Khan has a real good knack of putting people together, so who knows? Maybe this will surprise me. So yeah. Then we get our main event, Brock Anderson versus Malachi Black. I explained, obviously, why this match is happening. Brock Anderson trying to avenge his dad. Guys, I rewinded the Black Mass on Brock Anderson about 4 times and rewatched it. That's a lie. It was way more than 4 times. I don't know why I have this like innate Satanism need for Brock Anderson to get his head kicked off by Malachi Black. It was just so satisfying to me. There's nothing special about Brock Anderson to me besides the fact that he's Arn Anderson's son. And he looks like a carbon copy of his dad. It's freaky. The guy, he's not a main event of All Elite Wrestling. He shouldn't be the main event of Dynamite. I understand Malachi Black has a lot of star power right now. This is not a main event. This was not worthy of a main event. And it was a quote-unquote main event for a really crappy Dynamite. And it really topped it off. Because realistically, the post-match of this, it goes without saying, Malachi Black won with a pinfall with the Black Mass. The post-match, this was stupid. Arn comes in, checks on his son. Malachi Black goes to get a steel chair. Then Arn Anderson's like, fight like a man. Arn Anderson blocks one Black Mass. So essentially, Malachi Black just kicks him in the nuts and then hits him with a Black Mass that did not look nearly as good as the first one he did on him. It clearly didn't hit him. And then Malachi Black's, the camera's staying on him from way too long. Music starts playing. Malachi Black doesn't react to the music for like 5 minutes. Then Lee Johnson comes out. He's a member of the Nightmare Family, obviously. A rookie, really has been presented as a rookie, should not be in this spot either. None of this made sense. Malachi Black leaves the ring instead of... He really should have kicked Lee Johnson's head off. I don't know why he didn't do that. He kicked everybody else's head off. So this made no sense. I don't know. Presumably Lee Johnson will be the next match for Malachi Black. Hopefully they don't put it on a main event because it's stupid and it's not worth the main event. These guys in the Nightmare Family aren't worth the main event, and I think there's some weird nepotism or something going on backstage. Brock Anderson's not a main event talent yet, guys, and I hope that we get to see him get Black Masked again. So, with all that being said, guys, I know we've rushed through the show a little bit. I know I hate to kind of talk through a lot of this stuff and not be able to give a really thorough Dynamite review show. Maybe we'll just do I don't know how better to kind of give you guys the background on this stuff. Again, I'm new to this too. Bear with me. And if you are new to Dynamite, I hope you learned a little bit of something on this podcast. I hope you tune into next week's Dynamite, which hopefully will be a much better show. I hope you tune into Rampage on Friday night, which will also be a way better show. And if you guys are new to Dynamite and are new to just AEW in general, start with All Out. Start with the pay-per-view. See what you think of the pay-per-view. And if you like the pay-per-view, you know, I assume you should probably watch a couple Dynamites leading up to it. But if you like the pay-per-view, I really recommend giving AEW a shot, guys. I mean, I guarantee you, and I'm calling it now, by 2022, AEW is beating Raw in their ratings. Yeah, Raw did a $2 million this week off SummerSlam, so I'll give them their due. I don't know how, with a 3-hour show of crap, but they did somehow. But I really think AEW is gonna, you know, catch up in these ratings. And even if it doesn't, who cares? AEW is a great professional wrestling show. So if you're into professional wrestling, just like CM Punk said it best, you know, this is the place to be. AEW is the dynamite. AEW is the dynamite. AEW Dynamite is the show to be watching if you like professional wrestling, not this weird doll winking sports entertainment crap. So, with all that being said, guys, I hope you all have a great rest of your week. We will be back here on the highs and lows of the week. We'll be talking about Rampage, I'm sure, and a bunch of other exciting stuff coming up here on the WWE podcast. So, with all that being said, guys, I'll talk to you next time.